Hey there, welcome, and thanks for joining us. Hey, if you love the show, would you give us a 5-star rating on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or wherever it is that you listen? We would love for others to know the value that this show brings, and we invite your help with that. All right, we've got a great interview for you today, so let's hop in.
Yes, we're continuing our parenting series on wellness. Steve Arterburn joined us a few weeks ago to share practical ways to conquer digital overload and raise tech-savvy kids, which protects them from some very real risks and increases wellness.
That's right. And this week, we're exploring wellness through the lens of healthy sleep habits. And we've got expert Jessica Bryant here to help us understand more about why sleep is critical to wellness for our kids and small, simple steps that we can take to implement new sleep habits in our home.
Jessica is a representative of the Better Sleep Council. She's an internationally recognized pediatric sleep strategist, keynote speaker, and the founder of Sleep Happy Consulting. She is dedicated to answering the questions that exhausted parents have about their child's sleepless days and nights. And she achieves this through a range of initiatives, including corporate wellness events, community workshops, and personalized one-on-one support.
You know, in a world that often prioritizes relentless busyness, Jessica is a staunch advocate for placing rest at the forefront of family life. She firmly believes that well-rested children have the potential to make a profound impact on the world. Her mission is to underscore the importance of rest, ensuring that more families experience the benefits of a well-rested and harmonious home. By doing so, she aims to reduce the number of children who grow up feeling drained, anxious, overwhelmed, and pressured to perform at their peak every day. Jessica's based in Texas, where she resides with her husband and their 16-year-old twins. And meanwhile, her oldest child has embarked on a journey in nursing school away at college.
You're in for a treat as we connect with Jessica Bryant just on the other side of this intro.
Welcome to the Blended Family Breakthrough Podcast. We're your hosts, Mike and Kim.
We believe in a world where blended families can experience a future full of hope, connection, and peace.
That's why we offer tools, strategies, and guidance that move you from a place of confusion and conflict to experiencing a life of confidence and connection.
We're so glad you're joining us for authentic and sometimes comical conversations as we cover everything from romance to parenting, and yes, even dealing with that difficult ex.
So if you're ready to experience breakthrough in your blended family, you're in the right place. Let's dive in.
Hey, Jessica, it's so good to have you here on the show. Welcome, welcome.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much. I am thrilled to be able to have this conversation with you.
Yeah,
Great.
Thanks.
We're hoping to hear just a little bit about how you got into this. I mean, where did this interest spark in helping families with sleep?
Well, I've always been a fan of sleep. And, long story short, I was a new mom with a 5-month-old and, kind of navigating that transition, a lot of alone time with a baby, and things were going pretty well because I have a background in child development. That was my degree. I worked for early childhood intervention, which is the birth to 3 population with developmental delays. Okay. And I was a kindergarten teacher when I decided to stay home with her. And so lots of years of babysitting, nannying, in the summers between things and being on floors with families, with young children. And I quickly found that sleep was a topic that nobody could really answer. And also, to put it in perspective, this is 2003, before Google was attached to our hand.
Yes.
So I was so excited that there was a neighborhood event and that I could go down the street for like a neighborhood night out and talk to other adults. And she happened to ask me, how things were going. And this one sentence, I had no idea that it was going to change kind of my life or have as much impact as it did. But I said, well, sleep is going okay, but something's off. And she said to me, and of course she had a 3-year-old. So to me, I was like, oh, she's the genius. She's the expert. She's a step ahead.
Yep.
And she said, well, babies can sleep 7 to 7. And I was like,
Hmm.
I knew toddlers could, but I'm like, a 5-month-old baby? What?
Yeah.
And so sure enough, she gave me the book and I went home and I was so excited to finally have my own child to do research on, not my nanny kids, that I was like, I'm going to test this out. And
Mm.
sure enough, 3 days later, she was sleeping 7 to 7. And it really didn't have as much of an impact until, surprise, I'm having twins 3 years
Wow.
later.
Wow.
And so after that newborn experience, I was like, we're going to have to get on
Yeah.
this schedule to maintain any kind of sanity.
Wow.
And that kind of grew and developed into, oh, you're kind of the weird mom because your kids sleep. Like, are you?
Yeah.
So long story short, I thought I'd test it out when my twins were in 3rd grade and just see, is this something anyone needs help with? Is this
Mm.
kind of a strange thing that I really like talking about?
Mm.
And it kind of went from there.
Wow.
That's really cool.
Thank you for that background. So you've had this 21-year journey at this point in time of not only discovering for your own family the impact of sleep and how that helps or hinders some of the other wellness pieces around the family, but also being able to help others to discover that, you know what, sleep is important and there's something we can do about it.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Awesome.
Well, let's talk about that. Why is sleep important?
Mm.
And what exactly are the risks that come for our children? We know what happens to us as adults when we don't get enough sleep. Like we just don't function well. We all understand that.
Mm.
But what happens for our kids when they're kind of in that sleep deprived place and they're not getting enough rest?
I think that's a great question, Kim. And there's really not a ton of information about it. It's just not out there what normal sleep looks like through the ages.
Yeah.
And it's really our brains like grow and develop in sleep. Like so much gets done during sleep. And I think it's more recent research and all those things is coming out now and it's accessible to people, but we're still kind of ignoring it, and not realizing what happens when we're waking up every hour all night long, or we are a teenager who's maybe has broken sleep. They're sleeping maybe 4-hour chunks, or they're going to bed really late and they're not getting the minimum amount of sleep. Actually, teenagers, high schoolers, 70% of high schoolers do not get the minimum 8 hours of sleep.
Wow.
Their brains.
Wow.
So to dive into all kinds of specifics, there's sleep deprivation affects focus, mood. It affects relationships because, you're on a short fuse, processing, tolerating stress, paying attention in school. Our brains haven't been cleared out in a sense. It's like sleep takes out the garbage. But there's lots of research about storing memories and how there's one part of the brain that stores temporary memories and kind of holds it there. And when we sleep, that's when our brain decides which goes into long term and which just goes in the garbage in a sense. And there's even research coming out that sleep deprivation, you're more likely to remember negative memories that have negative emotions tied to it versus positive, because they're stored in two different parts of the brain. And where the positive memories are stored, it is more affected by sleep deprivation and kind of just shuts down. Like in the research, there's nothing being read from that area of the brain, when we've stayed up all night or we're not meeting, we're less than 5 hours of sleep, which is
That's really interesting.
Really interesting. But there's really not any health concern that is not affected by sleep, especially mental health. car crashes, teenagers who are learning to drive. The number one cause of accidents is fatigue.
Yeah. It's critical. It undergirds just about everything from a health and wellness standpoint.
Yes. Yes.
Wow.
Thank you for answering that. And I think, when our kids were younger, I did kind of stick my head in the sand sometimes of, hey, they're getting up, they're going to school. They seem to be functioning okay, even though they've been up and down all night and maybe have gone to bed too late. And, but when you look at the overall picture, yeah, they're grumpier, they're dragging their feet, they're complaining a lot.
Wait, are you describing the kids or me?
I'm describing myself, actually.
Exactly. That's right.
But yeah, it's one of those topics that we don't tend to talk about as much.
Yeah. Jessica, I wonder what might be some either I would call them maybe like false beliefs or maybe misunderstandings that a lot of parents have when it comes to this idea of really needing to prioritize getting kids effective sleep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, one overarching is the whole message of you can sleep when you're dead.
Oh gosh.
What does that even mean? And I think the pressures, I don't fault parents because I really don't think there's the right information out there that is, I mean, even my 17-year-old, her wellness exam a few months ago, I was flipping through the stack of papers they give you. And at the very bottom, goes through seatbelts and drugs and alcohol and all of those things. In the very bottom, all it says is get enough sleep. It doesn't say get 8 to 10 hours of sleep every night or 8 to 10 hours of connected sleep every night. It just says get good sleep.
Yeah. It's pretty subjective.
Yes.
It tells you really nothing. And it allows parents to be like, well, they got up and they went to school and they seem to be doing okay. That must be enough. But I think there's so many messages with parents today. Like one example, I had a parent who was picking their kid up from daycare and taking them straight to swim lessons. And then bedtime was just a bear. And it's like after 9-10 hours of daycare, how do we expect a young child to then get in, change clothes, get in, and then 12-hour day for a young child. But we're so like, if you're not teaching your kid how to swim, then they could drown at any pool, at any, so.
The overscheduling. Yes.
Overscheduling and, and just it falling to the bottom of the list.
Yeah. And then there's not enough emphasis placed on how do we set up a good sleep routine and how do we teach our children how to manage their stress at night and come down and be ready for sleep.
I think another myth also, Mike, is I feel like parents are just told like this is part of parenting. If you aren't sleep deprived, then you're not a good parent and you should just endure it. You should just one day they'll sleep. Like the power is all in the child. And as the parent, you're just supposed to have no control or no.
Yeah. That's super interesting because, we're empty nesters now. So we look at all this in hindsight. But that's really interesting to me because I don't know that I've ever heard anybody articulate it that way before, but I've definitely felt the sentiment of what you just said. Felt it.
So we're just powerless.
Yeah.
To change anything. We just, the kids get to dictate whatever the routine is. Yeah. That is a narrative that a lot of parents, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I know. I was guilty of that for sure, especially when our kids were babies.
Yeah. So how do we go about helping our kids get good sleep?
Yeah.
Like, where do we start?
I like to start in the morning and just kind of do a little reflection, in your family. Does your child wake up easily? Do they wake up naturally? How is your mornings as a family? Do the kids get off to school okay? Are they falling asleep and napping in the afternoon? Are teenagers, as a teacher, talking about their child falling asleep at school? My children are seniors. My twins are seniors in high school this year. And the amount of of things that kids they tell me are sleeping at school is a
Wow.
lot. Well, that makes sense
Yeah.
because there's 70% of high schoolers aren't getting that minimum of 8 hours. So I think first it's just like doing a little review of your own home. And if
Mhm.
and then I think the second thing is knowing what good sleep looks like, how
Mm.
it's defined, because I don't think we see that enough places.
Mm.
And good sleep is silent, uninterrupted, where you pass through all cycles of your sleep cycle multiple times, and you wake up feeling refreshed and energized.
Mm.
Say that sequence again.
Good sleep is silent, uninterrupted, where you pass through all the sleep cycles for the allotted amount of time for your age,
Mm-hmm.
and you wake up feeling rested and energized.
Mm.
Yeah. And to break that down in little bitty pieces, silent is in regards to snoring.
Yeah.
Oh.
Okay.
Snoring's not normal. If you're snoring, um, that could be an indicator to a red flag to just check out some other things and
Mm-hmm.
check your airway and other parts of your health.
Yep.
Uninterrupted. You shouldn't be waking up multiple times. For adults, waking up um, more than 2 times a night to go to the bathroom, that's not normal.
Mhm.
Obviously, pregnancy and some of those things change that for women, but for
Yep.
men, 2 or more times a night. So children shouldn't be waking up to go to the bathroom many times. They shouldn't be wet in the bed, those kind of
Mhm.
things.
And probably not being woken up by their cell phone.
Yes,
Would
yes.
that be an interruption? A buzz, a beep, a screen light? Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yep. Mm.
That
Just had
is
to throw that out there.
Mhm.
important. Yes, I have a whole part of that we can get to for sure. And the other part of uninterrupted, and I learned this to really dive into this specific word or connected sleep, is a friend of mine was talking about his son, and he was 15, and he had started having some mental health challenges and cutting himself and some other things that they had started noticing. And when his dad asked him about his sleep, he said his sleep was fine. Well, fast forward to getting a counselor and going through some therapy and getting the help he needed. It turns out he was waking up every 45 minutes all night long.
Wow.
But for a kid, for a child and a parent, he was in bed the whole time, right? So you think if you're in bed from bedtime to morning, that's good,
Yeah.
And he was getting up and getting out of bed and those kind of things, but we're not taught how to ask the extra question if we feel like something's going on. So I like to always bring that up.
Mhm.
And if adults, children, teens are sleeping less than 5 hours a night, that's considered fragmented sleep. And that
Okay.
is a whole nother conversation, but that's hard
Yeah.
on the brain and definitely should mean that, if a kid is sleeping from 3 a.m. to 8 a.m. and going to school, then that's putting a lot of stress on the body
Yeah.
and is
Yep.
hard. And then waking up feeling refreshed and
Mhm.
energized. Absolutely, everybody is not a morning person, but you should feel like you're ready to learn more stuff, or you should feel, versus like, just having a hard time waking up or setting the alarm 15 times, which is also not good for your brain, and having a really hard time getting up. And if you're 7, 8-year-old is waking up before their alarm and they're the early bird and ready to go, okay, that
We're doing
that
good.
that looks pretty good.
Yep.
If they're refreshed and energized.
Yeah. Man, that's really helpful. I've never heard anybody, I don't think,
Mm-hmm.
break down, okay, this is what healthy sleep actually looks like. That's great.
Mm-hmm.
So how do we go about supporting our kids? I know this is primarily about wellness for kids. I'm thinking about myself too,
Yeah,
though.
me too.
Yeah.
I'm going, oh, red flags.
But how does a parent go about beginning to create some habits and an environment where we actually promote this kind of sleep?
Mhm. I think it's definitely having a conversation and talking to them about it. And this can be, young children all the way through teenagers, and not expecting them to be like, oh yeah, let's all do it. This sounds so fun,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, but having a conversation about why sleep is important, um and that as a family they're a team.
Yeah.
And when you're a blended family, you're a team at each place.
Yeah.
So
Hmm.
focus on the team that you're controlling, and
Yeah.
Right.
You have
it,
influence.
Hmm.
yes, you have influence. That
Mhm.
is the important part to focus. And at the Better Sleep Council, they've got studies that kind of talk about when families prioritize sleep and they're watching the stress of the kids and things like that. They're at the long term, they're going to be better sleepers.
Mm.
So definitely to get started, I think a conversation. And I think for the parents, it's writing down, you know, some goals. I
Mm.
definitely feel like just even starting with how much sleep their child needs, maybe even just their youngest child, if they chose the youngest child in the family and they
Mhm.
had a 6 to 12-year-old, let's say.
Mhm.
And the American Academy of Sleep Medicine suggests that 6 to 9-year-olds have 9 to 12 hours of sleep.
Wow.
Wow.
So if we just kind of start there and work, I always like to say, let's reverse engineer it.
Hmm.
Hmm.
So having a conversation, making a note of total amount of sleep that is suggested for their development and their age, including
Hmm.
the parent. The
Hmm. Right.
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
Do it
need
as a
Totally.
family.
Hmm.
Mhm.
we need the oxygen mask on that on that
Yes.
Hmm.
parent. And it would be okay if the parent just started with their sleep first too, if they
Yeah.
needed to, you
Yeah.
know.
Set an example.
Yep.
Mhm.
Hmm.
But lately, I've been moving into more conversations about adult sleep, and I'm really finding that adults leave behind the routine
Yeah.
or the wind down.
Hmm.
Hmm.
And so that can be an area that the family could talk about too. Is in their home, what does that look like? Does that, after dinner, they do this, this, and this, and then at whatever this time, maybe it's not bedtime, but
Hmm.
it's turning off the overhead lights, turning, just having lamps on, starting to slow down, maybe turning off the TV or turning
Hmm.
off the screens when you start to
Hmm.
do whatever families do, like maybe getting
Yeah.
their backpack ready. There's so many different ways to do it. I don't want to say there's just one way because I
Hmm.
want to give families some easy things that they can do. But I have really found that for adults, the wind down routine is really something that's missing. And I think definitely starting that scaffolding at a young age for children is really helpful for
Yeah.
them, for a life skill, for wellness for a
Yeah.
long time.
So by wind down, you kind of mean the approach to bedtime to set
Yeah.
us up
And
for
maybe
success.
And that could just look like signaling if you have older kids, or it could be that it's just all roped into a bedtime. It's
Hmm.
we go upstairs at this time and we
Hmm.
we do a bath and we do a book or we do a song or we talk about our
Mhm.
day. It doesn't have to be some super long thing, but just
Yeah.
pick 2 or 3 things to like repeat and make
Mm.
it easy, especially on a blended family.
Yes.
It's even if it's just sitting on the side of each kid's bed for 5 minutes, with
Hmm.
the lamp down and just
Yes.
talking about the high and low of the day, or
Yeah.
one thing that the parent is grateful for, or one thing that the child is grateful for, having a closure, saying goodbye, and
Hmm.
leaving the room.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And especially for older kids, it's not about that you expect them the second you leave the room that for them to be asleep.
Right.
And I think that sometimes for parents is hard. It's what can they do in their room after you leave the room,
Mhm.
after
Mhm.
it is whatever bedtime, because you need a cutoff time, especially
Mhm.
and
Yep.
Mhm.
blended families, because you've got a lot to do. I'm
Yep.
Mhm.
assuming once bedtime is finished. So, can the child read a book? Can the child play with manipulatives, like do a puzzle, listen to a
Mhm.
story, something like that? But
Sketch in a sketchbook.
Yeah. Yeah.
sketch and a sketchbook. My son
Mhm.
Yep.
used to take his little magnet rocks and like
Ah,
uh,
Mhm.
play them, or he would toss up and down a golf ball,
Mhm.
where my
Mhm.
daughter would draw or read.
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
just some things, because sometimes they're not tired when they go to bed. So how
Right.
do they work
Mhm.
towards getting tired instead of I'm bored and wanting, a
Wait, you can't
device?
just put them in the bed and say, go to sleep, and they'll just go to
I
sleep.
wish.
Mhm.
So I love that conversation idea of,
Mhm.
okay, like let's actually do a little bit of research here and say, let's take one child, figure out, what's the recommendation of the amount of time that that child needs to sleep. And then I heard you say reverse engineer it. Like if we have to be up doing our thing at this time in the morning, how do we then back that up and create a routine leading into that that's going to actually help the child get rest to get the rest they
Yes.
need.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you've mentioned a couple things, this concept that Mike just said of having a conversation and kind of educating your children about sleep and why it's important. And then you also talked about doing those things in your home, if you're a blended
Yeah.
family where you have the influence over
Mhm.
your child's sleep habits. I'm wondering if we can talk a little bit more about, when two ex-spouses disagree about the
Mhm.
sleep habits or have different perspectives for their kids. How can a parent implement healthy sleep habits in their own home and then also have conversations and encourage their kids to follow those habits while they're doing visitation in their other home,
Mm.
even if that other parent is inconsistent or permissive or just doesn't seem to really be on top of the sleep thing?
Mm.
Any thoughts on that for us, Jessica? That's a big one.
Yes, I feel like you guys are the experts on that conversation for sure. But I definitely start with where you have the influence and really do some trial and error. I'm always talking about families to learn more about their children, and usually I'm talking about families when sleep is not going well.
Mm.
So worst case scenarios, and one of the biggest questions I always have is, what is it like the first day your child transitions back to your home, your influence? What does that
Mhm.
look like? Do we need to set certain, maybe different routines for that transition back? So I really suggest before you have any conversation with the person outside of your influence is to really trial and error and get it working in your home where there's
Mm.
not a lot of guesswork. And
Yeah.
then you've had that time, to help your child learn about their body and
Mhm.
talking about how to take care of their body. And one of the things I love to use with that is I teach sleep jobs.
Mm.
Mhm.
And I talk about, what is the parent's job. And I teach
Mhm.
families how to have this conversation with their child, kind of setting the expectation that mommy or daddy or granny, nanny, whoever's
Mhm.
on the team is in charge. It's our job to make sure you sleep healthy.
Mm.
I love
Mhm.
that.
All of these things that we talk about for our brain health, for our wellness, for our ability to think at school, our ability to tolerate stress
Yep.
Yep. Hard things.
Mhm.
in blended families. The
Mhm.
best thing we can do is set our kid up for success. And one of
Mhm.
those baseline, the bottom of Maslow's hierarchy of needs is sleep.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yep. Yep.
absolutely.
And so when it's back to that conversation of including the kid and making them, the child and making them feel a part of the
Mhm.
process, a part of the team, and talking about the parent's job and then
Mhm.
talking about the problem. and so right now we're not sleeping well. We don't have to go into, you're not going to bed when I tell you, or you're, you're waking up grouchy. It's just a general whatever that usually covers everything. We're not
Yes.
sleeping well. It could just be that mom's not sleeping well or dad's not sleeping well.
Yeah.
Yeah. As
And
a
then,
family, we're not sleeping well.
Yeah.
Like we're all on the same
We
team
need to
here.
talk
Yeah.
about it.
Yep.
Yep.
Great.
and then it's on their level. And what is your job at bedtime
Yes.
or at night?
Yes.
And, I have parents ask this question of a 13-month-old, an 8-year-old, a 12-year-old.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, obviously at a 13-month-old, you're not looking for a response, but you're communicating your confidence in their ability to care for
Yes.
your body.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that.
And so, our 8-year-olds can say, I lay down and watch my iPad for 2 hours, or I don't want to go to sleep. Or they could look at you, do you have three heads, and be like, I don't want, and they leave and they're off to play. But the importance part is like asking them the question, because that is communicating that you've told them your job. And now you're saying they're just as valuable, they're just as included, and part of the collaboration in our team as a family.
Right.
Yeah. And I think about, even if we do have more of a reaction of whatever, dad, that's silly. At least we've started an ongoing dialogue. I think sometimes, especially, I think your examples with an 8-year-old, I think sometimes we expect to have this one conversation with an 8-year-old and them to be like, why, you're so wise, Father.
Yes.
Thank you for telling me
It's all
that.
gonna flip.
I will never, ever do this again.
Yeah.
It's like, no, it doesn't work that way, right?
No.
So all we're doing by asking this question is actually starting an ongoing dialogue over the coming weeks and months of how we're going to begin to make some adjustments.
And then I love this concept of starting that in your home and getting those routines built and having those conversations and talking about these new ways of building better habits in your home. And then once the child understands, okay, my job around sleep is this, and maybe they even recognize, wow, when I'm in, this home and I'm getting better sleep, I feel better at school and I feel better when I'm at sports, and they notice the benefits. Then hopefully they can transfer their job over when they're in the other home of, this is a good bedtime for me, and I'm gonna do that even if the parent in the other home isn't insisting on that or living out that same concept. The child can kind of monitor themselves, hopefully.
Yeah, they can learn to over time.
Yeah. Or you can even have conversations with your child without even mentioning their other parent, because we're not going to badmouth the other home and how they operate. That's not our job. But you can mention to the child, you told me you're feeling better now that you're getting good sleep. I'm feeling better too. This is great, isn't it? Now, what do you think you might do while you're over at your dad's house so that you can get good sleep over there as well, and let them kind of problem solve on their own and come up with ideas?
Yeah.
That's kind of where I'm thinking.
Yeah.
Do you have anything to add to that, Jessica?
Yes, absolutely. You're teaching them to feel autonomy at bedtime, and you're teaching them to focus on how their body feels. And that can be hard for some kids. So that's why I say don't rush into that conversation, or don't feel, even though you're going to be frustrated, even though the lack of sleep at the other place is going to have a large impact on how things go at your home. If you can see the big picture of what do you want for your child, is you want them to be healthy, and you want them to have routines that care for their body and they advocate for themselves. The children are really in tune with our body, and we learn to bypass that and trust everybody else. I feel like at least that was my experience, growing up. And so I feel like when we're starting the conversation of the sleep, and I have specific jobs that we kind of go through depending on the age, but then on the back end, I'm really proud of you for staying in your room all night long until it's family wake up at this home, 7 a.m. or 8 a.m. or whatever. So I saw that it was really hard for you to stay in your bed at bedtime, or you woke up at 2 a.m. but instead of like coming out of your room, this time you turned on a lamp and you looked at a book for a little while and you waited for sleep to come back on. I'm really proud of you for
Yeah.
taking care of your body like that. So we're really specific about the little baby steps that then children can start to open up and say, I feel good. Or even modeling, a parent puts the milk in the cabinet instead of the fridge, and it's like, oh, I'm so tired. Or
Yeah.
that I ran through a stop sign today.
Mm.
That's not healthy. That's not good. That's not safe. What am I going to do tonight?
Mm.
So I don't feel that way. Just so the parent is also
Yeah.
talking about it, but then the child sees like, Mike, the stories that children come back and tell me, or their parents tell me from the sleep jobs, is I've had a child want to take it to daycare so that his friends know their jobs at nap time.
Nice.
So cute.
Little teacher.
That autonomy, that
Yeah.
independence. And I feel like
Yeah.
when you're a blended family, I mean, any family, but you teaching that independence, because you don't know what's happening
Right.
so much of the time. But if you can teach your child to be comfortable when you close the door at 8 p.m., that maybe they play quietly or read for,
Mhm.
a
Yep.
while, and they're
Yep.
comfortable. Oh, I'm
Yep.
tired now. I've yawned. I'm going to bed. But
Yeah. One of the things I
Yeah.
love that you just talked about is the modeling piece. Because, when it comes to visitation of kids in a blended family, it can be all over the map. Some parents are primary custody and they have their kids all the time other than every other weekend. Some are 50-50. And then there's the parents who only have every other weekend.
Yeah.
I think about that every other weekend and just the hopeless feeling that there is of, man, how am I going to influence this on 4 nights a month? Like, how do I do that? And I think one of the things you just said, Jessica, about modeling and then actually surfacing it through dialogue. Oh man, I'm really tired. Can you believe I just put the milk in the cupboard instead of the refrigerator? Or even modeling the positive side. I woke up about 2 in the morning and, rather than turning on the TV, I just decided to go in the living room and read a book. And I fell asleep in my easy chair and I felt great after that. Like just being able to actually talk about it and surface it. We do that so little with our children, processing functional things like this, just assuming that, well, doesn't my 9-year-old know that? Like, don't they know how much
so
sleep they're
true, Mike.
supposed to
So
get?
true.
And aren't they literate in all of these things? Well, I'm not even literate in it, right? So how do I just surface it through dialogue?
Yeah, and also surfacing the positive part. So,
Yeah.
man, I had such great energy today. I felt great at work today. I showed up in a meeting and I had such great energy because I got some really good sleep last night.
Yeah.
Or noticing it in your kids. I saw you out there on the soccer field really hustling. You didn't get tired at all.
Yeah.
What do you think about that? Do you think that, could be because you got some good sleep last night and helping them to connect those dots when you see them performing well and doing well and having energy and feeling good?
I love the tone that you just described that. It's not, see, I told you, you get some
No.
good sleep. You can actually, don't go down that
Right.
route.
Right. And then you can obviously circle back and say, okay, tonight or this week or next week when you come back, we're going to work on this,
Oh, good idea.
and
A lot
Mike,
of that. Mm-hmm.
you bring up a good point about if it's weekends only. A couple of the things I've picked up from experiences with families that have that sort of arrangement is you want to feel like you want to maximize your quality time. And so that affects bedtime.
Yep.
And I want to offer uh, an opposing view to that in terms of, is that better for you or is it better for the child? Because if there's a disruption in your routines, right? If whenever you have your child, you're not getting good sleep because you're doing all this great fun stuff from 8 to 10 p.m. Is it really great fun stuff?
Right.
I think another piece is not understanding how much children thrive with routines that are predictable
Mm-hmm.
and how safe that makes them feel. So,
Yeah.
especially in a new family that has separated and they're learning to go back and forth, if 7 days a week it's topsy-turvy at any house,
Yep.
that's extremely stressful for a child because it's so
Yeah.
out of their control. And
Yeah.
I think parents are not aware or they're not heard the message that what's comforting to a child is those basic routines when they're getting fed, when they're getting
Mhm.
sleep,
Yep.
those kind of things, when they're seeing you again. So if you could dial into one routine on
Mm-hmm.
your, weekends, 4 weekends in a row, it's whatever your bedtime is, whatever the time
Mm-hmm.
is. Obviously, I'm going to encourage you to make sure that it's enough for your child's age to get enough sleep. But whatever your routine is, do it each time because it takes so
Yes.
much longer to become a routine when you
Yep.
only see your child on the weekends. And I think parents, like you said, they just expect, oh, we did it last weekend. So
Mm-hmm.
no, they're going to push back. That
Yep.
every Friday
Mhm.
they're going to push back because they're seeing if you can set up that boundary and that comfort zone that you're doing the same exact thing
Mm-hmm.
that you did last Sunday or
Yeah.
last Saturday night.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so
Yes.
it's going to take 4 weekends to create a routine,
Right.
not one.
Right.
Yeah, and that really helps to build in that the stability that kids need and the security they need as they move between homes. That's what you're
Yeah.
talking
Mhm.
about there. So true.
I want to put a little precursor on this, and I don't want to derail the conversation. So I'm just going to drop a thought, and then I'm going to ask a different question.
Okay.
Here- Here's the precursor. We're talking a lot about collaboration across households, but sometimes we really struggle within the household between a
Mhm.
parent and a step parent.
Mhm.
And that challenge can come like we're what we would call a simple step family because only Kim brought children into our equation. But still, as Kim's trying to talk to me about how she wants to set up bedtime, I might disagree with that. There's that challenge between us, and we have to figure out. We're talking about, oh, you focus first on what you can influence.
Mhm.
Um, well, part of the impact of that influence is your partnership, building a
Mhm.
parenting partnership between parent and step parent. And then if you're a complex blended family, meaning both partners have brought kids into the equation,
Mhm.
now it's like, well, I want my kids to do this. Well, I want my kids to do that.
Yes.
And
Mhm.
it starts with us becoming a team. So we're gonna in the show notes, we'll
Mhm.
drop a couple episodes of how do we build our parenting partnership,
Some unity.
and we can go through that lens of okay, how do we partner around what bedtime looks like in our home. You have to do that.
Yeah.
If you don't, you're going to trip over yourselves just within your own home, much
Mhm.
less navigating between two homes.
And
So
you're going to send a lot of mixed messages to both sets of kids.
yeah. So
Mhm.
that's a conversation for
Good point.
another day. Yeah, we're going to create favoritism and double
Double
standards
standards.
and
It's
all
going
the
to get
stuff.
messy.
Yes. So
Mhm.
that's another conversation for another day, and we'll put a couple of episodes in there that can help get you started on that thought process as well. But let's assume now, like I said, I don't want to derail the conversation into that. Let's assume now, okay, Mike and Kim have figured out, okay, yeah, we're going to get on the same page. Let's build
Mhm.
some routine together. What might be if some strong common elements of bedtime routine overall, Jessica? How do we actually start to set up those habits?
So talking about what your wind down routine looks like or how to start one from the beginning in terms of a newly
Yeah.
blended family.
Yeah, if we want to set up a healthy wind down routine, what are some things that we need to consider as a team of what we want for all the kids in
What are
our
some
home?
elements of
Yeah,
that?
some elements of those routines that are most healthy.
I think definitely if it's a new routine and a new blend, it's what did the child come with that were their familiar routines.
Mhm.
And then also what are there any individual needs within the family? For example, I have a family right now where the 9-year-old is a child with autism.
Mm-hmm.
So her, her sleep routines may be a little different than, say, her 11-year-old brother as they
Mm-hmm.
go through. So is there any child that has a hard time sleeping in general prior to this?
Mm-hmm.
Just taking into the individual needs. And I always liked just setting a time where it was like upstairs, or we're done with activities. And I think I should probably back up and say, what are people's work schedules? What does the evening already set up like as you're trying to navigate this transition in terms of partners getting home from work or dinner or things like that? And I think it's a great time to, like you said, the partner piece of like creating it to what works best or what sounds good to both of you, but at the same time you can't leave behind that the children are adjusting too. And so you might not be able to just do a clean slate if you've got an 8 and 11-year-old coming in and a 13 and a 5-year-old coming from another family. So and so it's kind of, I think if the parents the parents of influence start with like their goals, what seems like it would work,
Mm-hmm.
and then the child's needs, how many hours of sleep they need, any other medical issues, things like that, and then just take baby steps. And maybe it's, what, at 7:30 we're turning off, we're done with all the downstairs stuff. We're going upstairs, and, maybe the 13-year-old's doing homework and you're bathing the 5-year-old, so
Yep.
you're signaling the wind down, but you're not forcing it. You have to do this and you have to be in the, and then I would say, like, what's the bare minimum? Right? Because you've got a lot of other things going on. So, I mean,
Yep.
is it a shower, brush teeth, potty, and a song? Because it's easier than picking out a book, and having that whole delay of how many, and then they want 9 books instead of 1 book, and then there's an argument about the book.
Yeah.
So you could do something easy of telling a story or singing a song or a prayer or a meditation, that you don't need a lot of things. An opposite to that could be you go upstairs and you have the children together for a while and you're doing kind of getting the wiggles out, like a family dance party. Or for some of my families that, one of the most overlooked areas of sleep is your child's calming, what they need to signal their brain to go from jumping, running, active, busy, reading, whatever, to now I'm expected to lay down and lay still and wait for sleep to come on.
Yeah.
So for some kids that we do like yoga poses, or we do a meditation, or these little games where you the wheelbarrow game, like you hold their feet and they walk around. Well, that's a joint compression. Think about if I tried to walk on my hands right now, like how hard that would be.
Yeah.
And how many muscles in my body and my core, my brain are focused on that skill, and giving that kind of sensory input to your muscles signals the brain to kind of wind down.
Interesting.
Joint compression, resistance, those kind of things, versus if it was a tickle fest or we were running races around the upstairs, that's vestibular and that wakes up the system. So it makes it harder for kids to wind down.
I love the wheelbarrow. That's great. Tonight I want you to do the wheelbarrow.
Not happening.
No, oh man,
you can do it.
You'll do it.
Yeah, I'll hold your ankle.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah.
That'll be fun.
That'll be the teaser reel. Is
there you go?
Holding Mike's legs and walking around.
Perfect.
with the lights turned dim.
Yeah, that's
Okay,
right.
dim
That's right.
lights has
Dim
to
lights.
be. Well, those are
Yeah,
some great ideas.
those are really great ideas. I
Mhm.
love Jessica, you do a great job of just simplifying it. Like we
Yeah.
don't have to over engineer this.
Mhm.
We do need to take into consideration what the kids are already used to. And let's not bite off more than we can chew because then everybody's going to get frustrated and then we're all just going to
Yeah.
leave it in the dust anyway.
Yeah.
And
Right.
so how do we keep it simple, take it in small steps and just work our way toward the goal that we've identified as a team, as a couple.
Yes.
I
Mhm.
really
How do we
love
make
that.
imperfect progress?
Yes, I love
That's
that.
the goal. That's
Yeah,
the goal right there.
yeah.
And
Good.
one more thing I will add, because I feel
Yeah.
like this leaving this out wouldn't do a service to your community,
Mm,
is put it down on paper. If it's
Mm,
new, put it down. If the children can draw out their routines from dinner to bedtime, great. And that's a way, if you're blending families, that some children have these routines, you can start there and then you
mm,
can, and so their list might look different but similar to the
mhm.
half siblings. And then you can always change it. Just because you put it
yeah.
on paper
Yeah.
once doesn't mean you can't change
Yeah.
it.
Oh, thank
And
you.
we're going to do this for a week.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And obviously, a child who's 5 needs different routines than a
Mhm.
child who is 13, and or a
Yes.
Mhm.
child who is 7. Parents are always like, "Oh, well, she's going to get upset because the 7-year-old gets to do blah blah blah." Well, the 7-year-old's a different person, and she's
Mhm.
older.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And so that doesn't matter. You're the parent.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're
Yep.
setting up the scaffolding. It's your choice.
Yep.
Um, and so I do like putting routines on paper so that children can come back from their other home and be like, "Oh yeah, this is how we do it here." And
Yes.
Yes.
then they check mom and dad, because if mom and dad don't do it, then it's like, "Oh."
Sets up a
Good.
little
I
accountability.
love that.
Mhm,
And I also love that we're doing this for a week or for,
Yes.
2 weeks,
mhm,
whatever, so that you can come back and say, okay, we've done great with this. Now we're going to
mhm.
make some adjustments.
Mhm. And I don't want to give the kids too much autonomy. I do want the parents to feel like they're leading the scaffolding. Never, I
Yeah.
mean, you can take on children's responses. Obviously, if you've picked too early of a bedtime and you figure that
Mhm.
out for the 6-year-old, you can change it. But
Yep.
you don't want to just you
Yeah.
allow them to share, but then remember, it's your job to make sure your home
Mhm.
sleeps healthy.
I love
Yes,
that.
absolutely.
It's really good.
One thing we've noticed with divorced parents during their single parent years is they tend to develop a routine of co-sleeping with their kids
Mm-hmm.
for a variety of reasons. So they allow the kids to either start off sleeping with them for comforting reasons, or they allow the kids to climb into bed with them in the middle of the
Mm-hmm.
night or early in the morning. However, when that parent remarries, that can create a really challenging dynamic, lots of
Mhm.
awkward tension for the new step parent, of course, as well as the bio parent and the kids. What advice would you have to share with parents around weaning their kids from co-sleeping habits? Because
Mm-hmm.
those can be pretty well ingrained.
Mhm.
Yes. Yes. So definitely if we're moving away from co-sleeping, we kind of go back to that conversation of it's my job to make sure you sleep healthy, and right now this is not working.
Mm,
Mhm.
And we are going to work on building your confidence in taking care of your own body and sleeping in your own room. And it's almost like if the child's been sleeping in the parents' room, you've got to flip it and start sleeping in their, co-sleep in their room,
Mhm.
a night or two, and then you can wean yourself off of it to maybe you sit in the room, depending on the
mhm,
age, right? And we sit in the
Right.
room,
Mhm.
or sit outside the hall so that they learn like they're expected to stay in bed.
mhm.
Yep.
And this is really good for teaching the child to self-soothe
Mhm.
and get comfortable with that space, because you never know what's going to happen, and you never know how much they have to manage individually and trust themselves in their
Right.
other space. And
Yeah.
so I had a client who the 12-year-old was sleeping, like falling asleep with mom, and the 7-year-old boy was falling asleep with dad. And they hated going to the grandparents that they hung out with all the time because the child didn't think they could sleep alone because they're using the parent as a soother. So this is just a great example of older children. We think about co-sleeping for 3 to 2-year-olds and those kind of things, but that's why they wake up in the night and they're panicked because you're not there, and they come to find you because they think they can't sleep without you. They think they're helpless, that they need your presence in order to sleep. And I know there's lots of complicated stressors and things going on in a divorce or a blending of the family, and you definitely want to make your child feel safe. And obviously there's not one right way or wrong way. You have to do it for what works for you. But I love that you're bringing this conversation to your community because it's the big picture. Okay, maybe I want to allow this for a week, but why am I not allowing it for a year or things like that? Because the stress and that you're causing when you decide you're, in a new relationship or you're blending families, and it's all of a sudden, that's not setting your child up for success.
Yes, it's a process. If they're already used to that habit of co-sleeping, it's a process of getting them set up in a secure place, like you said, where they can self-soothe and actually know, oh, I'm okay to sleep.
Sure, that she's worn, or dad, or, something that smells like them. And obviously you don't have to do all this with older kids, but it's like reintroducing their sleep space and making sure it's comfortable, something similar, a pillowcase or similar bedding from if they've been sleeping in your bed. And then what do they need in their room? Do they need a temporary light to turn on so they can look at a book versus coming out of the room? You're building those coping skills. Children build so many coping skills in the middle of the night with their imaginations and things, and those come out to really help their confidence and their mental health later on. And I would say it is a process, but you don't want the process to be too long. You don't want to be doing the sleeping in their room, just move from rooms and you're more uncomfortable, so
that's going to create some awkward tension with in your partnership.
We'll set a goal. In 5 years, I want the child to, don't do that.
I mean, we kind of dealt with this with my daughter, who would get night terrors and then come and crawl into bed with me. That had been a pattern. And we did go get some professional advice with that, which included me getting up and going into her room and helping her to self-soothe. And one thing that was recommended to us, and I would love to get your opinion on this, Jessica, was to build a comfort kit. So there was a box filled with, stuffed animals, and there was a picture of me, and there was a specific prayer that she had written out, and just, some crayons and colors, just certain things that she could do in the middle of the night.
And she chose the items
She chose the items. She decorated the box. So at first I would, when we first started this process, I would get up and go in there with her and go through the comfort box with her for a while. And then gradually I wean myself out of her room, and she got to the point where she could utilize the comfort box, the comfort kit on her own, and also make one for her dad's house, because she was also having night terrors over there, and they handled it completely different. It was causing her to be up half the night. And so that was able to help her there. So I'd love to get kind of your take on that. Or
did we mess her up? She's 29 now. So
no, I love that. You're building coping skills. You're giving her something that she's allowed to do when her eyes pop open. Because a lot of families come to me and they'll say, I laid with my child at bedtime and she went to sleep, and it's really no big deal. It takes 15 to 20 minutes, but she keeps waking up at 2 a.m. and I just let her scream at her door or whatever for an hour. And I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa.
Yeah.
That's not going to work, because at the beginning you set the pattern that you conditioned her to think she needs you. So first we have to change the conditioning of the expectation, and then we can give her the space to, fall asleep at bedtime and fall asleep at 2 a.m. But
Yep.
at 2 a.m., you're giving her, she can open this box. She
Mhm.
can think about you. She can stay in her room, because what happens is the second their eyes pop up, it's like, oh, my sleep environment has changed. Mom
Yeah.
is not here, and I'm going to find mom. Staying asleep every night, all night long for the next 18 years is totally unrealistic.
Yep.
Wake up in the middle of the night. So you're,
Mhm.
and so you're giving her that box. Some of the things I do is I give a little notebook and a pen, and I put it
Mhm.
next to the bedside table, and some kind of like temporary low light toy. Or older kids, they can turn. But it's like, if you have a bad dream, or I don't use that word. Let me back up.
Okay.
But when you have a bad dream, but we don't want to say bad dream or
Mm.
nightmare, when you say, when you have thoughts in the night,
Mhm.
or you have questions, then write it down on this paper. And this is even for little kids. Like, and if it's a scribble, that's fine.
Mhm.
Write it down on this paper so that you can tell me about it at breakfast.
Mhm.
Ooh,
We're
yes.
validating, like, if we can easily sense a pattern in fears and things like that. But no, I love the comfort box that you implemented, because it's giving those coping skills that she could use for life, in different ways. I roll over, I get comfortable, I go to the bathroom, I come back, and I wait for sleep to come on, but I stay in my room.
Right.
So good. I love that. Thank
Thank
you for
you.
just kind of clarifying that. Hey, I before we kind of get to the close of our conversation, we've talked a lot about, hey, let's surface that this is a real
Mhm.
thing. Let's have some dialogue, begin to build some partnership within the home that we influence, and then start to build a plan. We don't have to change it overnight, no pun intended, but we need to build a plan and some goals and some process. I love writing it down, all of that. I wonder, could you give us some ideas or some principles when it comes to creating the right environment for all this? So we've got a plan, we've got, we're on the same team, we're going to start to work the plan. Now, from an environmental standpoint, what are some important things? You've kind of alluded to some of them already.
I think first, if you can't just jump to, we're all going to bed at 7 o'clock. If you've been going to bed at 10 p.m., don't try to put that on your plate. Like, back it up to 9:30, that kind of thing. But environmentally, really that modeling, you started with the conversation, but it's we're all finished with dinner, it's going to be wind down time. Maybe that's a little bit more positive than bedtime. And everybody, the second you
Mhm.
say that word,
Yep.
like,
Yep.
no, it's really thinking about what you want. What do you want? You want it to be chaotic and stressful each night? Do you want your mornings to be, and sadly, I mean, it all falls on parents,
Yeah.
right? And it's just so creating the environment and the space to work on sleep, I think in today's modern society, is really hard with all of
Yeah.
the activities and things like that. But if you're starting to blend a new family, or you're just deciding, hey, we haven't worked on sleep, let's do this. It might be in the middle of fall right now, or it might be in the middle of spring, and you're like, well, we got soccer and
Mhm.
art lessons and counseling and this, but it's
Mhm.
like, okay, but if this is what we're prioritizing, when do those end?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Looking ahead, what, January 1st, we're going to pause on
Yeah.
and
Whatever. Yeah.
just create that space. I think that's a
Yeah.
really hard thing for parents
Yeah.
to do. And I think the other thing is to realize kids need you. They are looking for that boundary. I had a 12-year-old tell me, well, where can I get more sleep? And I really want to get enough sleep. Her parents, she framed it as, my parents signed me up for volleyball without asking my permission. And it's really important for me to get good grades at school. And so I get out of school at 4 o'clock and I have to go to volleyball, and I don't get home until 8 or 9 o'clock to eat dinner and then start my homework. And I'm also in all of these honors classes because I want to do well. So I have to do all my homework, and I really want to sleep, but I don't finish my homework till 11 to 12 at night.
Mm.
And this child looked at me and she was ready to do whatever I said. And she basically wanted me to tell her, she's like, so during lunch, should I go to this teacher's room because her room is darker than the other teacher's and she has a couch and I could get a nap. I could take a nap for 30 minutes. And I was like,
Wow. Yeah.
no, you need a parent saying, this is too much. How well are you doing your homework at 11 p.m. as a 12-year-old who
Right.
needs 11 to 12 hours of sleep? So it's that space. So even if you don't have it right this minute, when are you going to get it? Or when are you
Yeah.
going to protect your
Yep.
wind down or
Yeah.
protect that routine, whatever it is,
Mhm.
in your home? And then don't give up. Give yourself a few little notes of why you're doing this when it gets really hard, when all these other things are really hard, that you can say, I'm just going to keep repeating it. I'm going to keep making baby steps to prioritizing sleep and protecting this time.
Yeah.
That's really helpful, Jessica. That's talking a lot about kind of the schedule climate. I'll use the word climate, our schedules, the emotional climate. You said, what do we want, chaos or do we want calm? Making a signal and that kind of thing. What about the physical space? You alluded to earlier, like let's shut off the overhead lights and turn on lamps, or turn off. This is what time we turn off the TV. Like, what are some physical space things? And yes, this might be a really appropriate time to say, what do we do about our phones?
Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah.
Putting them to bed
Yes.
before you put the kids to bed. I think it's a big, especially for me, I didn't grow up with cell phones or smart devices. And so it's been really hard, just new. A lot of my friends, that kids had sleepovers and I took away the phones, and I put them on the counter. It wasn't like I locked them
Yeah.
up, but I have my children put their phones down in their downstairs, but
Yep.
making the habit of putting the screens to bed, putting the iPads to bed, putting your kid to bed with an iPad, that is not a good long-term goal. I realize there are times where you just can't be an optimum situation, but that's having more and more research coming out and how that affects your child at school, it affects their learning, affects their reading, those kind of things. Ideally, screens are put down, especially for younger kids, 2 hours before bed, but 1 hour for sure. Especially for young children, it's really hard to see sleepy cues and things like that when they're watching TV. And so you can miss them. So especially if it's a new routine and you're trying to pinpoint what's the right bedtime or when is your child getting tired so you can follow their lead, I would say like hit a pause with the screens right before bed. And maybe do dinner and outside, and so that you can kind of navigate, okay, the 8-year-old is a mess at this time, but the 6-year-old's in a great mood, all those different things. So yeah, turning those things off, ideally, turning the overhead lights down, bedrooms as calming as possible, a low lamp, their bedding. Do they have something that goes between homes that is their comfort? Some kids, they need more cocoony sleep spaces to help them just make that transition. Other kids can just sleep on a cardboard box and they're fine.
Sure, yeah.
Also, I think just the parents' energy. You've had a hard day, or maybe you had a frustrated transition pickup. It's like, can you take a moment to just walk outside and take a deep breath for a second and center yourself? Any parent can do that, whether they're single or blended or whatever. We all need it, especially if it's something new, because it's new to you as an adult. It's new to the child. And if you're wishy-washy as the adult, it's just gonna
Yeah.
fizzle. Yep.
Yeah. So we want to work on that wind down routine, not only in how we're dialoguing and the kinds of activities that we're doing, but also thinking about the physical environment around us. And yes, that includes electronic devices. And we've heard from expert after expert after expert that you just reinforced, like, hey, 1 to 2 hours before bedtime, we need to plug that phone in or that device in somewhere other than our nightstand. Yeah, we did similar thing. Kids put the phones to bed actually in our room on the windowsill because there was some evidence of temptation to sneak down to the living room and grab it. And so, power down, plug it in, put it on the windowsill, and phone goes to bed. And I think we've gotten pretty good at building that habit for ourselves as adults. Even as empty nesters, we put it in the other room and all that. And man, I just can't emphasize that one enough, because the second element, was it the second element of good sleep, is uninterrupted, is what you said earlier. And man, this is probably for our, especially teenagers and preteens, this is probably one of the biggest interruptions that they're getting in this area of life. And it's just not healthy. And so we want wellness. We want our kids to do well. Yeah.
Yes. And I mean, I'm 49 years old and I have a hard time putting down my phone and stopping the little tiny. I didn't used to watch the little tiny videos, but now I watch them like an 80-year-old on Facebook. And it's really hard to put those things down. How can I expect my 15-year-old, my 10-year-old to do that? So it's hard. It's a battle worth fighting. The research, the Better Sleep Council's, research, like many other research studies, consistency is important. And inconsistent bedtimes leads to lifetimes of poor sleeping. The screen time, the more screen time you have is evident in impacts your sleep overall. And so I don't want it to be a fear thing, because I feel like blended families are dealing with, different stress. But if there's one of those routines, your meal routines, your sleep routines is just right there with it, and baby steps is okay. It doesn't change overnight. And also, children want to sleep. They want to sleep, but they can get so overstimulated and so overtired that they need you to say, you can throw this fit, but you're going to throw this fit in your bedroom, because I can tell that you're tired and you need to be, we're not negotiating for another hour and a half on this. You just need to rest your body. I love you, and I'll sleep in the mornings.
Yes.
I love that.
And parents, remember that boundaries speak love to children. They may not like them. They may push against them, but they speak love, because you're caring for your child when you set a healthy boundary for them, and they will see that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Wow, what a great conversation. Thank you so much, Jessica. I wonder, you've been talking about different families you work with, and you help them strategize some of this. If somebody's listening right now and says, man, we need to talk to Jessica, where can they find you?
If you'd like to find more about the Better Sleep Council, you can find them at www.bettersleep.org. And you can find me on Instagram at Sleep Happy. And yes, I work with families of young children, teenagers, tweens, and have started working with adults as well, because we all love to talk about our sleep, but we don't know often what to do with it. And there's often some little small baby steps we can do that have massive impact for our health and wellness and for the lives of our children that we love so much, and we want to set them up for success. And sleep is a great place to start.
Great.
Absolutely. And thank you for the wonderful tips you shared with us today.
And we'll put links in both of those spots to your Instagram as well as to bettersleep.org in the show notes. So makes it nice and easy for those listening. Just scroll right down, click the link, and you'll find Jessica.
Yes.
Yeah. Hey, thank you so much, Jessica. What a pleasure it is to have you
Yes.
on the show. Really appreciate your contribution to the conversation.
Yes. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for inviting me. I enjoyed it so much.
Man, we are so grateful for the time that Jessica took with us and for all the valuable insights that she shared. Hopefully, you've picked up a few tips that you can implement in your home to promote healthy sleep habits and increase wellness.
And be sure to watch for our next episode in this wellness series, in just a few weeks, focused on social wellness for our kids.
That's right. But for now, that's going to make this episode a wrap.
Until next time.
Does it ever feel like people just don't get how tough it is to blend a family? What if you could experience a community that's all about healthy support, guidance, and practical strategies that help you thrive in your blended family? Well, now you can. Blending Together is a supportive community for blended family couples just like you.
We've educated and supported hundreds of couples navigating the unique challenges of blended family life. Now we're inviting you to join our community and experience the transformation that awaits you. Blending Together is not just another community. It's a place where you'll find practical, real-life strategies for building unity as a couple,
Creating more connection as a family,
experiencing partnership in parenting,
and even dealing with that difficult ex.
Blending Together is a safe, growth-focused space where you'll get to connect with us and maybe more importantly, with other blended family couples who truly understand what you're going through. Along the way, you'll discover practical tools, guidance, and hope that empower you to find a future full of confidence and connection.
When you join Blending Together, you'll gain access to a variety of resources like our private Facebook group and online learning platform, monthly coaching meetings, monthly Q&As, and you'll even get to vote on the content for our monthly workshops.
Blending a family can often leave couples feeling alone or isolated, and quality support can sometimes be expensive and hard to find. That's why we're offering you access to all of this at a super low monthly rate, because every blended family deserves the opportunity to thrive regardless of their budget.
So scroll all the way to the bottom of the show notes and click the link to join us in the Blending Together community and meet other couples just like you in our upcoming community meeting. Plus, when you join before the end of the month, you'll gain access to our brand new bonus mini course that will help you make quick headway. Hey, thanks so much for joining us today. We can't wait to meet you inside Blending Together. Just click the link all the way at the bottom of the show notes to get started.
We'll see you there.